Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. It's episode 2717 of The Tom Woods Show. We have the great Dave Smith, who needs no introduction. You know him as host of Part of the Problem, which you all listen to, no doubt. I just saw Dave for, I don't know, probably at least the third time in person doing comedy. And, you know, Dave, people who hate you, who have never seen you do stand-up, one thing they like to say is, he's unfunny, and he's a failed stand-up comic. And I'm thinking to myself, I would love to be as failed as Dave is, selling out all these shows, making $1 zillion. And yeah, look, people are in stitches at these shows. Like, there was actually a time at your show this time, I went with one of my adult daughters where I legitimately spit out some of my drink. It wasn't just a thing you say. I spit it. I'll tell you later on what the line was that made me do it. But anyway, so Dave is on top of the world. He's on every big show there is. He gets attacked all the time, but that's just a sign of his success. So welcome back, Dave.
Oh, well, thank you. That's far too kind, Tom. I really do appreciate that. And look, this is the Tom Woods Show. I'm home. It's good to be home. This is my.
That's very kind of you to say.
Me, yeah. This is still the big show that I do. Is doing
that
this.
That's very generous of you to say. Let's start with something totally frivolous, and then we'll get into the serious stuff. But did you see that video clip of the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, trying his best to eat Somali food in a restaurant?
No, I didn't, but I heard people buzzing about it.
Oh, my gosh, Dave.
I have not seen the clip yet, but oh man,
it's one of these things.
It's
like,
all right there.
You know, when you're growing up as a kid and you're eating food you don't really like, but you're at the family dinner table and you got to do what you can. And so, you know, you move the food around, you chew all day long, you know, or you're invited to somebody's house and the food is terrible and you're just chewing and doing your best. And when they ask how you like it, you like barely are able to get like an okay sign up to them. He did the okay sign. And I said to myself, when was the last time you were eating delicious food and had to give the okay sign?
Well, I mean,
that means it's just like an SOS.
Well, I think you're skirting the real controversy there, which is that is a white supremacist sign.
I totally forgot about that.
And so that's really my outrage. This man is obviously trying to enjoy some delicious Somali food while secretly letting us all know that he's a neo-Nazi.
Yeah, Dave, but I think the food was so bad it flipped him.
Oh, is that really? Well, everyone has their own conversion experience.
Now he gets the white supremacist argument.
You start thinking Churchill really was the villain of that war after you eat some Somali food.
Geez, this food changes my whole perspective on everything. But it was just so crazy because it was such an unforced error. No one required him to do that.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just, I don't know. It is interesting. I guess the more serious kind of angle on all of that is that there was always like a right-wing critique of libertarianism that I never completely agreed with. I guess I still don't, but like they would essentially say that like libertarianism works, but like within a certain sphere, you know, like within European or within high IQ, high trust societies, it works, but it doesn't work in these other things. I'm like, I don't know. I don't exactly agree with that, but there's a kernel of truth to it, at least. And there is an insight there. And there's something to be said for like, just like the way multiculturalism and lax immigration was sold versus the actual costs of it when implemented, especially in like a liberal zeitgeist. And so it's like, oh man, so now we got to pretend disgusting Somali food is great. Like that's also part of this, like as we must just degrade our own culture to pretend everything else is superior. I don't know.
Well, it's so many things that only became clear to me as time went on. I mean, I respected Pat Buchanan, but he was writing at a time when the consequences weren't so obvious. You know, he really was seeing into the future. And, you know, I mean, you look at this situation in Minneapolis and it's absolutely wild. And we have to sit around and pretend that either it's not happening or that the right wing is making everything up or whatever. And I'm not convinced by any of it.
Well,
and the thing is, Somalia would not tolerate this.
Right.
Would they?
Right. Well, I feel the same way. Although I was like, I was coming from a very different perspective than you were. So like, even when you're talking about the Pat Buchanan stuff back in the day, you were a right winger. I mean, you were always like on the right, and so could at least like. Whereas I was like a liberal kid, at the time, and I thought like I was like, Lou Dobbs, your number one issue is how many Mexicans are coming into the country. Like it just seemed so ridiculous. Like obviously that's not the problem. And, you're picking on like the poorest kind of amongst us is the problem, is how it seemed to me at the time. Obviously later he wasn't really. He was picking on the leaders for allowing this to happen. But yeah, Tom, it's just so demonstrably true at this point. Like, and also just the numbers alone, like just this level of rapid upheaval is of course unsustainable. And in the strictest sense of the word, like you will not sustain what you had. This is fundamentally altering your nation. And I still, despite how many times I've picked this fight with other libertarians and other, liberals and conservatives, I still have not like gotten a reasonable answer for why it is that we ought to support a total upheaval of the nation itself, not the state, but the nation itself, that is against the wishes of the people of that nation. Like from the libertarian perspective, you're like, but the property owners don't want this. And then from the like little d Democrat perspective, we never had a national referendum on this, and the people surely would have voted against it if they had ever had the chance. And in fact, every time they have a chance, they vote against it. So seems pretty indefensible to me.
Not to mention, if this were being done in reverse to some of the countries that, let's say, the left makes a big production out of supporting, they would call it Western imperialism. They would say, you're going to send all these people into these countries and celebrate your white holidays and speak your white languages and make this demand and that demand. I mean, they would acknowledge what it is. And it also seems obvious by now that what happens when you reach critical mass with stuff like this is that it becomes a war of all against all. You can't have social peace. I mean, social peace is hard enough, even when you don't have these extra dimensions here, where people, politicians, and the state are going to pit everybody against everybody. I wish that weren't the case. I wish we could have a minarchist society and all that, but I'm just using my eyes, and I see that is not how it works. It works this way.
Yeah, and I think there's a key insight there where, you said like if this was happening to another people, like if it was white Christians doing this to any non-white Christian group, and really the key there is that it's the battle has never been with relativism at all, Tom. It's not relativism. That's not what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with is anti-West, anti-white, anti-Christian bigotry. Like that's, it's just like the more precise way to think about it. I remember, I was just rereading, because I don't know if you saw it, Tom, which I'm hoping you didn't, because the whole thing's kind of embarrassing. But I was just doing a debate I did a debate with this Liquid Zulu guy who, and so I was reading, I like reread for like probably the fifth time, but I was reading like these pieces that Murray Rothbard wrote in 1989 and 1990. It was like right at the beginning of the paleo split when he was leaving the Libertarian Party. And there was this thing where he wrote about how he was criticizing libertarians, not libertarianism, but a lot of libertarians. And he was talking about how they were the like kind of atheist problem in the Libertarian Party amongst its members at the time. And he says at one point that he had kind of chalked it up to like the Randian influence. But then he realized that like it wasn't really that, because if you worshipped crystals or like some other, like thing, they were very welcoming of that. They were very welcoming of everything except Christians. And that, by the way, this doesn't apply to Liquid Zulu. I'm just saying I was thinking about these things ahead of that debate. But like, I just think there's something interesting about that where you get to the nugget of like, oh no, it's not really atheism. You're not really an atheist. You're actually fine with all these other spiritual beliefs. You are bigoted against Christianity. You are against any American bourgeois norm. That's a whole different thing than being like, I'm arriving at this from like strictly rational, strictly rational starting point.
Yeah, it's never been. I mean, if if we were dealing with a huge, overwhelming number of, I don't know, like Norwegian violinists or something, I don't think they would be as passionate about it.
Yeah.
So there's something like, why is that? Norwegian violinists are just as human as anybody else. Or if Africans had ended slavery, like they had outfitted huge ships and monitored what they believed to be slave routes and making sure that slavery was not being exported or committed, we would never hear the end of that, of the heroic Africans. But it's the opposite. It's the British ships that did that. And there's like, it's like they resent that in a way. Like that's not even 1 point in Britain's favor, not one. And that's not normal. Again, if you were looking at this rationally, you would say, well, that's 1 point for the British. You would say that.
No, I swear, with a lot of this stuff, it's like, do you have a political viewpoint, or are you just mad at your dad?
Yeah.
What's really going on here?
Yeah. I mean, on some level, I've been listening to Tucker a lot, and I mean, I kind of knew this already, but it really is, on some level, with a lot of these people, an expression of self-hatred. It is. It's like they deserve to be punished in some way.
Yeah, or a resentment against, which, like, I can kind of relate to, because I'm a guy who grew up without a dad, and I also I am anti-authority in a very personal way. Like, I've just always, there's a reason why, like, I've never had a job. I mean, I've never been a boss. I mean, I had jobs, like, as a kid, but, like, I mean, in my adult life, I've always worked for myself, and I've always, down to every little detail, done things in, like, my own way, where I don't follow anybody's rules. Like, I curse too much, and I just, like, I'm not going to stop. I don't know. That's just how I am. Like, and so I understand that. I understand that impulse, but it's like a resentment against your parents, against your school, your authority figure, anybody who ever tried to put any restrictions on you, type of thing. And it's very poisonous. It is not good for your soul to fall down that path.
Well, soul is a good transition point. I assume you saw there was a little bit of a video clip of, now I can't think of his Huckabee, Mike Huckabee. And he was in Israel speaking to 1,000 Christian pastors from the U.S. And saying that they have to now go out to their congregations and teach the truth about Israel. Because why? Because so-called anti-Semites are out there confusing everybody. Now, we could sit here. I did an episode a week or two ago with a Lutheran theologian, Adam Francisco, on the theological problems with Christian Zionism. The main problem being, no one ever heard of this forever. And secondly, this is not the way Christians view Israel. The Israel of God includes Christians and the church. Anyway, we can get into, we did a whole episode on that. But what really struck me, though, is the gospel of Christ is trying to reach people to say that your sins can be washed away by Christ. That these things that weigh you down and that cause you sorrow and grief, you can find refuge in Him. That is the gospel message. Talking about the current state of Israel couldn't be a bigger distraction from that. What in God's name does that have to do with the gospel message? And yet, which one does Mike Huckabee seem much, much more urgently devoted to?
Yeah. Well, if I just quickly on the theology of it all, because look, I'm far from I was going to say I'm not an expert, but I'm not even like a well-read person on this stuff. But I did see that episode of your show. I thought it was really great. I think the case just seems to be so undeniable to me. But I always said, to me, it's just, you go like, but so what if, like, for not in the godly world, but here just in the very human world, what if the human being, David Ben-Gurion, had, like, decided to call Israel something else? Like in 1948, if they had just picked a different name, then does none of this apply? Is it only because they use the same name? Because if it's only because it becomes a thing, like, I think I've said this to you before, but it's like if I named my son Jesus Christ, and then I told you, Tom, like, my son is your Lord and Savior. Look, it says it right here in your book. My son is your Lord and Savior. And then you'd go, yeah, but Dave, the book came first, and you named your son after the thing in the book. Like, I don't know. It's just too goofy to me to possibly believe that this makes any sense. But on the political aspect of it, it's what's so wild. And this is really, to me, even beyond how horrible what Israel has just done to Gaza is, and just the level of human suffering and the images that we've all seen and stuff, how indefensible that is. The real reason why the toothpaste can never be put back in the tube here is that, like, the entire generation, the entire young generation that's paying attention to this stuff now is like, look, the Mike Huckabee thing, on the very face of it, that is maybe an appropriate thing. I mean, it'd still be a little bit weird, but like maybe it's appropriate for the Israeli ambassador to the US to be doing. But what on earth, Tom, is the U.S. ambassador to Israel doing? Your role is to be a representative of our government, not to go send a bunch of propaganda, set up a propaganda apparatus on behalf of the foreign government that you're the ambassador to, not of. You're the U.S. ambassador to Israel. And it's just for people who have, once you're aware of this dynamic, between, like, the link and the connection between Israel and the United States of America, it would be indefensible for any two countries to have this relationship, which I don't think there are two other countries that have ever had the relationship that the U.S. and Israel have, where their leaders openly worship. Like, maybe if we had been conquered by them, it would make sense.
Hey, gang, I've been eating and promoting Omaha steaks for a long time, but when I found out what this year's Woods deal was, I myself went on a steak buying frenzy that is still going on. I just got some steaks for the great Bob Murphy, as you know. Well, what's the deal? At omahasteaks.com, the whole site is 50% off. Plus, with code WOODS, you get another $35 off. And your friends and family and colleagues are going to be thrilled when you send them something they actually want. And right now is the perfect time to save on delicious gifts and holiday hosting favorites from Omaha Steaks, a family-owned company with over 100 years of expertise in the meat industry. Omaha Steaks delivers an exclusive lineup of USDA-certified tender steaks, and their fan-favorite filet mignons have achieved the distinction of USDA-certified very tender. And they also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, cozy and convenient comfort meals, and delectable desserts, and every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. So save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code WOODS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code WOODS. Hey, folks, are you being lied to? They tell you to defer paying your taxes by saving in a 401k or IRA because you'll retire in a lower tax bracket. But if that were true, why are so many retirees in the highest tax bracket of their lives? It's time to get the truth and discover a better way to grow and protect your money. Bank on Yourself is the proven retirement plan alternative banks and Wall Street desperately hope you never hear about. With Bank on Yourself, your plan doesn't go backward when the markets tumble. Your principal and growth are locked in. You'll know your tax rate in retirement, 0 under current tax law, which protects you from the coming tax tsunami. You get access to your money for emergencies and opportunities with no questions asked. There are no government penalties or restrictions on how much or when you can take it. And when you use your money, it keeps growing like you never touched it. Try doing that with a 401k or IRA. You get built-in inflation protection, too. Your money is guaranteed to grow by a larger dollar amount every year in both good times and bad. You can get a free report that reveals how you can bank on yourself and enjoy tax-free retirement income, guaranteed growth, and control of your money. Just go to bankonyourself.com/woods and get your free report. That's bankonyourself.com/woods, bankonyourself.com/woods. Yeah, and then meanwhile, one of the great insights that I have found on Twitter in recent weeks is the one, if leftists didn't constantly pretend to misunderstand things, it wouldn't be completely hopeless to try to argue with them. Like they make it, right. Like, I know you know what I'm saying. Well, likewise, the U.S. Zionists like Ted Cruz, who pretend that that Qatar is the place that's really dominating the U.S. Now, I know he knows that's false. I mean, we all know he knows that's false. Everybody knows he knows that's false. Everybody knows that everything he says about that country or any other country that comes to his mind could be said in spades about Israel. Everybody knows this. He knows it. Huckabee knows. Everybody knows it. But they pretend that, well, we really are against foreign influence in the U.S., so therefore let's go after, I don't know, Uganda or something. All these things could be said about Israel. And by the way, just for appearances, couldn't, that term, of course you do, the term woke right that they use to attack, people who are actually conservatives and right-wing.
Right.
Couldn't they have one person that they accuse of being woke right, one person be pro-Israel so the whole thing isn't so obvious? Couldn't they just find one and say, yeah, this person is, maybe pro-Israel, but it's just way out of line on everything else? I don't think there is. So why don't they just admit what that's all about?
And isn't it the same old tired playbook? Because, so much, like all of us, I mean, you in particular, because you were like there for it. But like during kind of like the 90s, I mean, it went on from the 60s, I think, all the way through. But like the whole purge of basically every single right-winger who we admire, from Conservatism Inc., like all the good ones getting purged out by Bill Buckley and stuff like that, or Dinesh D'Souza getting Sam Francis fired, or like any of that stuff. It's always the same thing. It's like, hey, Tom, here's a crazy coincidence. Like, we're purging all the racists out of conservatism. And in a crazy coincidence, that happens to be all the anti-war right-wing voices. Those happen to be the racist ones. By the way, the ones who are against bombing the very countries of the complexions that you're saying they hate so much, those are always the ones who have to be kicked out. Like Pat Buchanan, with all of his same social views and all of his same economic views and all of his same cultural views, is fine when he's supporting the Cold War. But when he's against the war in Iraq, the first one there now all of a sudden he's problematic for all those other reasons. You're like, wasn't that interesting? Or something like, what was his name? Robert Byrd, the senator?
Yeah.
Byrd?
Yeah.
He was a Klansman. He was a member of the KKK. But that didn't seem to be a problem for no one now, did it? Because he was voting with the establishment on everything they wanted. And so, we just looked the other way. And so likewise, the new term woke right it just so happens to only be applied to every single prominent right-wing voice who opposes the warfare machine. Every single one of them gets labeled it. And then they'll say, well, it's about being, anti-Semitic or something like that. But then it doesn't matter whether you're anti-Semitic or not. There's lots of not anti-Semitic people who oppose this stuff, and they still get labeled the exact same way. So it's all, I don't know. The part of what's fun about that one is just watching it fail, like watching it just miserably burn and die. And, it's just, you see like James Lindsay still every single day is tweeting about it. And the entire responses is just everybody mocking him. So at least the propaganda isn't being sold nearly as effectively as it used to be.
It's just crazy. And again, I don't, I've gotten a little pushback in my newsletter from some Jewish readers, and I'm very ashamed of them, actually, because I thought I had the really smart Jewish readers, and for them to say, well, you shouldn't be so critical of. No, you should be more critical. You should say it's embarrassing to me as a Jew that there are billionaire Zionists who are trying to unseat the best congressman we have, who represents, the people of America, who have a reason to want to be represented by somebody in this government. And the reason they're going after him is that he doesn't want to give enough money to some foreign country. Now, that's not the primary concern of Americans,
that's right.
So,
well, that's right. And wasn't it, I mean, you probably know more about this than me, but I know that this was a really big deal during the 1960 presidential election because Jack Kennedy, of course, was the first Catholic president in American history. And I believe he even had to give a speech about this, about his relationship with the Catholic Church. And I guess the concern was, right, and this is back in 1960, this is there's still segregation in the South, and this is a very different cultural attitudes toward different sects. And, I know whatever, like my this is going back a bit further than that, but like my great grandparents were, on my mother's side the dad was Christian. So there, I got a little bit of non-Jew in me. But it was like a Protestant and a Jew got married, and it was a huge deal. Like, families didn't talk to each other for years over it. I think it wasn't until they had kids that like everybody kind of got back together. Like that was the way of the world back then. It was a very, very big deal that was considered an intermarriage, of sorts. Whereas like today, it's just not. Like, I'm Jewish and my wife's Catholic, and it's just never been a thing for anyone in our family, Anyway, but so John F. Kennedy had to essentially give this speech where the concern was that like, hey, but what if he's more loyal to the Vatican than he is to America? What if the Pope were to give you some type of order? Would you be and he had to like explicitly say that like, no, as commander in chief, I am loyal only to the United States of America. And now I'm not sure, Tom, you know this a lot better than me. I don't know if that's the correct answer according to God in the Catholic view of things, you know what I mean? But like, regardless, I think on some level, we'd have to admit that like, hey, if we're doing this thing called the United States of America, and we're doing this thing called citizenship and representative government, no matter how much me and you may know that's a farce, then like the most basic deal here has to be that like, no, you can't be loyal first to like some other thing that is an identitarian, relation to you or something like it just, that can't be it. And so I would apply this to every single group. I'm Jewish, and I don't think there's anything unique about also applying this to Jewish people. That's saying like, and also just like, I'm an American. I got kids. My kids are growing up in this country. We're doing a thing as Americans here is the idea. And so, yeah, you have to be loyal to this first. That's the only way to make this work. Like, the only way to make a family work is that your wife has your loyalty first. And the only way to make, a nation work is that. And I think libertarians sometimes have a problem when you say that, because you're like, well, are you comparing a family to the nation or something? They're different. But it's like, yeah, but I'm not talking about the state even. I mean, obviously, we have this thing that is the state. And so we have to deal with that. But fundamentally, as a people, you have to be loyal to our people first. And so when there's a thing like, you see Ben Shapiro, who's like he's made millions as branding himself as an American conservative. And then you see him, Tom, I mean, the most blatant example of it, right? Celebrating when Bashar al-Assad falls and Jolani, the former emir of al-Qaeda in Syria, takes over the country. He's celebrating the fact that we broke up the Shiite crescent. And now weapons will not flow as easily from Iran into Lebanon through Syria, where they can be used by Hezbollah fighters against the IDF. Now, I'm sorry, but that's just not a problem for North America. You know what I mean? Like, and in fact, the only dog that American interests have in that fight is that Al-Qaeda is a legit enemy of the American people. No matter how stupid our response to them was, or how much the government bungled the fight against them. But like, no, there are things that are clearly not in our interests that Israel does. And in those cases, you got to pick, and your loyalty has to be to us. It's the most reasonable demand.
Yeah. And there's, if you'd rather be somewhere else, nobody's stopping you. Yeah. Like if I want to live in Armenia, I could go do it if I wanted to, but yeah. I can't sit here and try to move the direction of the policy of the country I live in toward that of a country that has nothing to do with the rest of America. It has nothing to do with it. And by the way, I had forgotten about the example of Kennedy feeling obligated to say I would not have an extra loyalty to the Vatican. And yes, by the way, you were curious. The traditionalists out there would say he's a liberal sellout for saying that he should, right. But it doesn't matter. But I always liked the story of Al Smith, who didn't get elected, but who ran in 1928 against Hoover. He was a Catholic, and he didn't get elected. But people were actually saying that the Pope, Pius XI, was gonna move into the White House if he got elected. So Al Smith loses. He sends a telegram to the Pope with the word "unpack." Sorry, I didn't win, so you're gonna have to stay in Vatican City. But By the way, but let's go back to Huckabee for a minute, because we didn't talk about.
Sure.
So there was this meeting he had with Jonathan Pollard, who was an Israeli spy, unrepentant, who has urged other American Jews that if they feel it necessary, they should do exactly the same thing. So as clear as day that this guy's a traitor, and Huckabee meets with him, nothing happens. Nothing. Now, you know who the real traitor is? Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, she's the traitor, but not the guy who literally meets with a spy and has no consequences. Again, I don't want to hear these complaints from people who say, well, I'm a longtime listener and I'm Jewish and I'm upset that you think blah, blah, blah. You of all people should be unhappy about this, because it sure makes you look not very good, right? So you should be up there saying, well, I have nothing to do with this. You know, though, of all people, you should be outraged at this. But I 100%. No, one thing, like not even a slap on the wrist.
And you can't, I just can't get over it. This is like one of these things that just like, it makes my blood boil. Like I could just rant about this for hours, but I won't do that. But Tom, especially, is you somebody who knows this history a lot better than me. In fact, as somebody who taught me a lot of this history, and then something I've always been really interested in is in fact, I was just telling Scott on the phone the other day that I'm so excited that he's offering a history of the Cold War in as one of the courses in the new Scott Horton Academy. Because it's just like, oh man, I love that. I'm just like, that history for whatever reason, like it really interests me. And so to keep in mind here that what Pollard did was he stole top secret U.S. information that then Israel traded to the Soviet Union in exchange for them allowing Jewish emigration to Israel. And so just to think about that, Tom, like to think about what a crime it was at the height of the Cold War to betray us for the Soviets. Like, and the thing that I get to is like, so just think about like the whole history of all that stuff, right? Like Bill Buckley, the most influential conservative thinker in the second half of the 20th century there, his whole thing that Rothbard always attacked him over, right, was that he essentially, his foundational argument, and that whatever, I know we've talked about it before, I forget the name of the title. It was like In the Deep Blue something, but if you want to look it up, all you got to look up is William F. Buckley, Totalitarian Bureaucracy Within Our Shores.
Yeah, he
and
did
you'll
say
find
it.
the article. And so essentially the article starts, but like, I'm really, this is the gist of it. Like, I'm not exaggerating, but the article basically starts by him going, hey, libertarians, not using that word because this was a different time, but he's going, hey, you guys are right. Okay. We all agree that obviously you guys are right about all this Lockean first principles and that government is an instrument of tyranny and that the great struggle of humanity is tyranny versus liberty. And therefore we want to maximize liberty and be against the government. He's like, you guys are right about that. Okay. We're right there with you. But see, the thing is this, we got this Soviet menace. And if we all agree that the big struggle of humanity is tyranny versus liberty, and the state is an instrument of tyranny, well, then there's this giant experiment in total statism with the stated goal of taking over the world and making the entire world an experiment in giant statism. And therefore, we should all be on the same page that we have to do everything to fight that. And unfortunately, the only thing that can fight that is, quote, to erect a totalitarian bureaucracy within our shores. So he's making the statist argument that yes, it sure would be nice to not live under a giant totalitarian bureaucracy, but it's the only thing that can fight a giant totalitarian. Now, Murray Rothbard brilliantly tore this apart and the obvious circular nature of the whole thing, and the idea that like if the big risk is totalitarian bureaucracy, then it doesn't really seem to defend against that to just institute one ourselves. Okay, so it was always stupid, but the point is, it was the justification for the entire emergency that is what threw away the American experiment. Like it was it was the justification for the military-industrial complex to begin with. I mean, it was erected during World War II, but it was the justification to continue the thing and expand the thing. The CIA, the entire thing, Tom, the entire deep state, the justification was the Cold War, the war in Vietnam, the millions and millions of people who died, the hundreds of thousands of Americans who died, the war in Korea, shipping drugs from Venezuela into America, all justified by the Cold War, all justified by the Soviet menace. The goddamn funding both sides of the Iraq-Iran war. I got 500,000 people killed on both sides. The whole justification was the Soviet menace. The whole buildup of NATO, the justification was the Soviet menace. And then you're telling me that a country spied on us to get top secret classified information to trade to the Soviet Union, and that wasn't enough for the guy to be publicly executed and Israel to be completely cut off from aid forever? In fact, wait, what happened? We just gave Israel even more aid, gave them unconditional support after, and our ambassador, who seems to be very confused over whether he's the U.S. ambassador to Israel or the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., is meeting with the guy privately and advocating for him. It is such an outrage. If you wrote this in a novel, it would be too unbelievable to get published.
Folks, a lot of people are all talk, no action, and I hate to see people in our world fall into that. So here's an action we can all take. I'm urging you to secede from the American health insurance system, because this open enrollment, millions of people are going to fall back into this same dysfunctional system. Well, the Woods family at least doesn't play that game anymore. We ditched the old-fashioned way and embraced crowd health, the alternative to the crazy American health insurance world. And that's true of a lot of people in my world, beginning with my business partner, who had to have knee surgery, and no problem, covered by Crowd Health. Fantastic. Everybody I know loves it. And we're talking healthcare for under $100. You get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, as well as a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. If something major happens, you pay the first $500, and then the crowd steps in to help fund the rest. And you'll be part of that crowd, which is a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. The system is betting you'll stay stuck in the same overpriced, overcomplicated mess. Don't give them the satisfaction. Join me in the promised land of Crowd Health. This open enrollment, take your power back. Join Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using code WOODS at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. Hey gang, if you're like me, you've been watching the Fed inflate the dollar into oblivion while politicians bungle trade policy and rack up historic amounts of debt, and you're wondering how to protect what you've worked so hard to build. That's why I want to talk to you about Monetary Metals, a company doing something truly revolutionary with gold. We all know gold is a safe haven asset, but let's face it, most gold just sits there in a vault, not doing much. It holds its value over time, but it doesn't grow. What if I told you there's a way to not only own physical gold, but also earn a yield on it, paid in gold, every single month? That's exactly what I do with Monetary Metals. I lease my gold with them and earn an annual yield, around 4%, in gold, not in paper currency. I keep my ounces, and every month I get more. So think about it. You still benefit from any price appreciation, like what we've been seeing in 2025 with gold pushing past all-time highs, and you also get paid more ounces of gold along the way. That's what makes this model so exciting. It's a genuine breakthrough. For the first time in decades, gold is functioning as a yield-bearing asset, just like in the classical gold standard days. The Fed can print dollars. They can't print gold. It's time to start growing your wealth in ounces, not just hoping for the best with fiat. Go to monetary-metals.com/woods to learn more and see how you can start earning a gold income too. That's monetary-metals.com/woods. When I was growing up in the 80s, the Cold War was still on. Mm-hmm. It was still very much on, even though Reagan wanted to do what he could, as Reagan did have pro-peace instincts, for all his peace through strength. He really did want to be remembered as a peacemaker. That's why he wanted arms control. He really did. And some of his handlers didn't like that. But it was still very much in it. And so I went, whatever they told me, I just believed it. And you're right. Now, when I see what the results have been for the U.S., that we built up this military-industrial complex that cannot be dismantled. It's like no matter what we do, we cannot dismantle this thing. It has got to make you think, look, I know at the time I thought we had to do this thing against the Soviets. At the time I was convinced of it. But these times call for being willing to look again at things that you were so sure of because look at what the consequences are everywhere. Maybe we shouldn't have been so sure. Maybe this was a bad idea, and maybe it wasn't even necessary.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then I also think, and I know I think you were the first one who I ever heard this from. But there's also from just like the social conservative point of view, which many of the Cold Warriors, were, or at least claimed to be. It's like, think about what Vietnam did to this country. Like however you feel about the Soviet menace or any of that, you could still say that having a giant Afghanistan times 10 in the middle of that accomplished absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? In the same exact way that eventually we just said, well, we can't overthrow the Taliban, so we leave. Like the same exact thing. We didn't even roll back communism. But what did we roll back? We rolled back American tradition.
Yeah,
I mean,
normality.
Normality. I mean, we really, that's right. We really rolled back normality in every sense. I mean, the country was, if you take what the United States of America was in 1962 to what the United States of America was in 1972, is a different country. And it will never be the same country because of that. And because of Vietnam. Very much because of that war. And so how could you not, like we always say, especially from obviously from the libertarian point of view, we're very intimately familiar with our own, diagnosis of this. But even just from the conservative point of view, when you look around, and you just see that nothing has been conserved. Nothing, all the best parts of America, if you're a conservative, what were you trying to conserve? I'd have to guess okay, Christianity would probably be at the top of that list. How are you doing on that? What? The Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights? Yeah, that's in your mission to conserve that you violated the whole thing, trampled all over it. Have you maintained churches and communities and neighborhoods? You haven't even, you didn't even maintain gender. We had to fight to win that one back after 40 years of conservatism, Inc. And by the way, I'm supposed to be debating Dinesh D'Souza, and this is one of the lines. I'll put that out there publicly. This was one of the lines of attack I'm going to go with him on. Is that, hey man, you're part of the old guard of Conservatism, Inc. When I showed up on the scene, nothing had been conserved. The debate was over whether your son's really a girl trapped in your son's body. And then it was us podcasters who went out there and rolled that back. So sorry, you can sit down now, Grandpa. There's a new group in town.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Well, was that rescheduled? I thought that was for December 1st.
I don't think I agreed to a date. But I think we had agreed to a date, and then he had some conflict, and then he wanted to reschedule it. But I'd have to check. Maybe did I say we were? I'm not sure if that's scheduled or not. But from what I understand,
in advance of this, I went through your Twitter feed just to see if there was anything big was going on that I couldn't miss. So I did see that, and I thought, how did I miss this debate with Dinesh?
Oh, no. Wait, so you had seen that it was supposed to have happened last week or whatever? Yeah. No, so we were supposed to do it. It got announced. Then he had a scheduling conflict, and now we're rescheduling. But so he's still agreed to do it. I assume it's still going to happen. But yeah.
But because I hadn't heard anything from you about it, I thought to myself, hey, Dinesh couldn't have beaten Dave. That can't be the explanation.
He just crushes me. You're like, oh man, let's not talk about that anymore. No, I don't think so. It's an impossible situation for these guys to really win one of these debates, because it's just it's too indefensible. And also once you cheerled for the war in Iraq, you really just lose a ton of credibility on any of these subjects,
Did you happen to see Dinesh's debate? It was months ago with Nick Fuentes.
Yes, yeah, I did see that.
I watched it just out of pure curiosity, and I expected Nick to just be a firebomber, But I guess when Nick wants to be serious, I thought he was unbelievably convincing. I couldn't believe it. This was not what I was led to expect. He was, and Dinesh treated him like he was anybody else. He didn't talk down to him or anything. But geez, if I were Dinesh D'Souza and I got my head handed to me by Nick Fuentes like that after I've been in the movement forever, that would prompt some internal questioning.
Yeah, no, the thing about Nick Fuentes, which makes him an interesting figure, is that there's layers to him. Whether you like those layers or don't like those layers, but like the very sarcastic, very shock jockey thing that he does on his show a lot, that generates a ton of clips and a ton of outrage and a ton of laughs and like all that. He's got that level, but like he's also just a really well-read, smart kid. And I don't say kid to be insulting. Some of his fans get annoyed at me for saying that. That's just how 40-year-olds talk about 20-year-olds. But anyway, but he's really smart. And when he wants to be like in a serious debate like that, he can really deliver his case. And yeah, he tore Dinesh D'Souza to shreds. And I did think it was honorable that Dinesh like treated him, like respectfully through it. But the thing about it is just like, Tom, like their argument is so indefensible, and he knows what he's talking about. And so, yeah, I had the same feeling you had on that.
I want to talk about Dan Crenshaw in a minute, but first, let's say a quick word about your wife's new book.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. So my wife, she just wrote her first children's book. It's called Healthy Hibernation. I'm really so proud of her. I love it. It's a really just sweet, cute book. And she teamed up with this really talented artist who did the illustrations for it. And it was just something that, it's very gentle and it's not preachy or anything like that, but it's just about starting conversations with little kids about eating healthy. I think that that was my wife's never been like a super political person. She has, in fact, I tell this story sometimes, but when I first started dating my wife, she was asking me about, my political views and stuff like that. And we were talking, we were out to dinner, and she said to me, she goes, I really don't have any strong political views. I just really hate feminism. And I remember telling her at the time, I said, this day, I go, that is the perfect first date answer. There is literally nothing I'd rather, don't get me wrong. I know there's like libertarian couples where both of them are libertarians, and God bless you, more power to you. I think that's great also. But like for me, I'm so obsessed and angry about this stuff that like my family time, it's better for me to be like just life and just exist as a normal person and not, we talk about stuff and she'll ask me questions about things. But like I said, there just couldn't be a better answer for me to hear on my first date. But anyway, one thing, and she's not super political, but one thing that really did, like the Maha movement thing. Not that she necessarily completely agreed with any one figure there, but I think she really did feel what a lot of parents, I think around our age feel, is that we're almost kind of like the first generation of parents who, like my parents also did have, tons of junk food and overprocessed food around them, but they just didn't know anything about it. We kind of know about it now. Yeah. And so now we're in this situation where we kind of know how you literally go into a supermarket and it is like still, even in the nice ones in my nice neighborhood, it's just like there's so much poison just around everywhere. And then there's like, it's like what my wife tells me about this experience, like she's got like 2 kids in a shopping cart pushing through the cereal aisle, and all it is like the most brightly colored packages of pure garbage, and you're like sitting there in this situation where you're trying to like steer them away. So anyway, the concept was like, just like writing a book that would help give parents like one more little tool to start conversations with kids about eating healthy. And she's just the sweetest person in the world, and I'm so proud of her. And the book's doing really great. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to mention it.
Oh, absolutely. Healthy Hibernation. So I'll have it linked at tomwoods.com/2717, which is a show notes page. I got a chance to see it in the pre-publication version, and I absolutely love it too. And these are important conversations because we, as you say, we're aware of these things more than we used to be, but not everyone is. So your kids, let's say they go over to the neighbor's house and the neighbors have all these brightly colored things, and then your kid's going to want to know, well, why don't we have these amazing things? And so you're going to need all the ammunition you can get to at least, your kid might not agree or might be a little disappointed, but it can at least kind of grudgingly respect and understand where you're coming from and why you believe as you do. So check out, it's Lauren Smith and it's Healthy Hibernation. So before we get out of here, you had not a formal debate, but some somewhat surprising back and forths with Dan Crenshaw, the congressman from Texas. And
Yeah.
well, you know what? I'm not even going to set it up. Can you just talk about where'd that even come from?
Well, so I don't know exactly where the latest thing came from. But I've known that he's aware of me and not a fan. And he's like, I don't know. Should I say, yeah, you know what? Sure. I'll say it here. It's all right. I know that well, let's just say, I won't say who it was, but you could guess, like, of all the people you could imagine, let's say, is there any really big famous person who launched my career? Well, he's intervened to try to like warn people like, this Dave guy's getting everything wrong and blah, blah, blah. And so like I was aware that he knew who I was, and he's ducked debate challenges from me before. So he just, I forget what tweet he even responded to, but yeah, he just quote tweeted me, started like trashing me about something. And then it was really just it was such a surreal moment. I mean, like, I don't know. It's very strange being me these days. But so like there's a sitting member of Congress who's just like essentially just talking smack to me on Twitter, and then making the most pathetic womanly arguments, like I like literally things where he said something like he goes, I actually served and fought in war so that you could sit in a podcast and have the liberty to criticize me. And I go, sir, please explain in the 20-year catastrophe that resulted in a better armed Taliban, how that allowed me to podcast. And then he'd go, Dave's denigrating U.S. troops and their service. And you're like, oh, really? Big, tough military guy? Or did I hurt your feelings by pointing out that you fought in an unnecessary war of choice? I'm sorry. But then Tom is just this is the beauty of like the new frontier, the new wild, wild west that we're in. And I say that as a libertarian in the highest possible compliment.
Right.
That's not, I know some people think of that as a bad thing, but not around
not
me.
Us.
It's not, yes. So there's a sitting congressman who he feels compelled to start trashing a comedian. It's just so, and then he's just getting ratioed. He's just getting lit up. Like he comes down from his perch, you know what I mean, to like say something. And I mean, like the numbers were just like, just getting destroyed. I'm getting 10 times the retweets on every single one. And it's just, I don't know. That is the fun of the new playground that is this decentralized media / social media world, that these guys, like, they almost feel like they have to come contend with us. But then at the same time, what I know right after that, because let me tell you one thing, if they're one team in this world, let me tell you something about that Pierce Morgan team. I mean, I'm getting text messages 5 minutes after the tweets have gone out that they're like, would you debate Dan Crenshaw? Would you like to do it? And I go, absolutely, let's set it up. And he doesn't want to do it, right? Because like, what's he going to come do? Like, and the funny thing to me, Tom, at this point, it's like, it's 2 years, I kind of like, I had, the last few years for me have all been big years, and I had like big debates were always kind of part of what, like I had the Chris Cuomo debate, that was a big deal. And then obviously the Douglas Murray one was the biggest one, and then like dozens others. But at this point, I'm kind of like, hey, you've seen what I have to say on this. Come take it on. Like you get such an advantage at this point, because it's not like in those early debates where people walked in, when I debated Nick Sarwark, in his mind, he was like, I'm a professional lawyer. There's some comedian. I'll go debate him. But he had no idea what he was walking into, But like, that's over now. They all know what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say, what my points are. But he doesn't want to come say it because he knows he's got no counter to any of it. He's got no response. Is he seriously going to show up to debate me and defend the proposition that the war in Afghanistan gave me more freedom to talk on the podcast, other than it gave me a huge glaring example of government failure to talk about? Like, that was the only thing that war handed me.
Well, and you were getting some criticism because you were showing disrespect to a war hero. And I want to address that in two ways, because the first thing is, we have to make these arguments because his answer was, because you were saying after all these years, like, what did any of this accomplish? And he said, you know what it accomplished? I prevented another 9/11. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, we have to answer that, because if we don't answer that, you get more and more and more of this, because it just goes, it just stays unresponded to. It becomes part of the mythology of the empire. We have to respond to that. And I don't care that if the guy was in war or he wasn't. I have to tell the truth about it. But secondly, I guess this is where the radical libertarian in me comes in, because I see that's the different part of the difference between me and a Joel Berry, who shows up and says, well, look at the way Dave treats a war hero. He fought with distinction.
Oh, did he? I didn't even see that. Oh, geez.
Yeah, see, I'm sorry, Dave, that you had to find out about that.
But it's fine.
But I happen to think that it's relevant that it was not a good cause. You know, that it was all upside down and screwed up the whole time. I mean, Scott Horton tells the Afghanistan story, that's for sure, big time. In his book Fool's Errand. But I mean, the imperial wars have all been bad. They've all been based on lies. They've all led to outcomes that were worse than what we had before. And they've all involved squandering enormous wealth and feeding the country with propaganda. Now, I have to say that. I feel like the whole thing about, well, you're a war hero because you got injured. I mean, I'm sorry you got injured, but you shouldn't have been doing this. Like, am I allowed to make 100%. That argument? I know even the new right won't like that kind of argument, but you shouldn't have been in there. You shouldn't have been doing this. You know, like it's not like John McCain was just walking through a meadow one day and the North Vietnamese put handcuffs on him. You know, like there was a reason that John McCain wound up a prisoner, right? Well, don't do that to people. Don't do that, and you won't wind up there. And I know that is the one argument we're not allowed to make, but doggone it, I'm making it.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. I'm like, look, man, I mean, okay, Tom, you write books and I tell jokes, and Dan Crenshaw is a big tough guy who lost an eye and fought in the war and whatever. But like, okay, if you're a big tough guy and you're tough enough to go and fight in these armed conflicts, then I think you can handle some honest criticism. You know, like I think that's reasonable. And I'm sorry, like this is not a situation where like, look, let's say I was you had me over for Christmas and you had like a cousin there who had lost a leg in Afghanistan, and he's sitting at the table and he goes, well, at least we prevented another 9/11. And then I stood up and went, no, you didn't. Like, you know, okay, yeah, maybe in that situation, it might be like a little over the line. Like, I just respect that the guy went through something really horrible. Let him believe that. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm talking about a sitting member of Congress claiming that a catastrophic mass murder campaign prevented another 9/11. Sorry, I'm going to need to see some evidence for that claim, sir, because there is really none that exists. Now, Al-Qaeda, as you mentioned, as Scott Horton covers beautifully, both in Enough Already, but really in Fool's Errand, the Al-Qaeda camps were wiped out by the CIA and the special ops before Christmas of 2001. You know, and Osama bin Laden, it's in late 2001 that he flees from when we could have cornered him in Tora Bora and I believe was in Pakistan for the rest of the time until Obama killed him. So the idea that we need that the war in Afghanistan, you're talking about deciding to fight a 20-year regime change war against the Taliban prevented another 9/11 is a ridiculous claim. I mean, ridiculous. Like what Afghans have killed. I mean, as far as I'm aware, like people from Afghanistan who have killed Americans, there were in the invading U.S. Army, some people got killed. And there was this one guy who just shot and killed a couple people the other week. But he was flown in by the Biden administration. Like it wasn't because we didn't fight a regime change war there. And he was one of the guys on our side of that conflict, not a Taliban member. And so like, I don't know, like, and then I guess he also, I thought he only served in Afghanistan, but I guess he was in Iraq also. And then the war in Iraq, I mean, that there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq before the war. And then they all flooded in there after the U.S. toppled the Saddam's government. So again, there's just the idea that this in any way, there's even any evidence that Al-Qaeda was decimated by the war in Afghanistan or Iraq is just not true. And so sorry, if that's not true and a sitting member of Congress is making a claim that's not true, then I get to point out that that's not true. And if that hurts anybody's feelings in the process, who's the woke one now?
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? We all know the expression about your feelings.
Right.
I would just urge people to remember that if you want to be really based, you can't have the view that Iraq was the bad war, but Afghanistan was the good war. If that's what you're thinking, then I really, really do recommend that you read Fool's Errand. Or if you want to even be faster getting the knowledge into your brain, just go to scotthortonacademy.com and, you can learn right from the source directly, like a pipe into your brain.
Yep.
All right, Dave, I'm going to let you get rolling, but obviously part of the problem is it's on my listen list. I mean, I think because, by the way, I like to be efficient with my time. So, like, even when I brush my teeth, I resent the time this is taking me. So I want to listen to something. So I have you loud enough that you can be heard over my electric toothbrush. And, like all around when I'm doing little things like that, part of the problem is on. So not that you need my endorsement, but I love Part of the Problem. I listen to it all the time. I recommend it to people, including the folks listening now, but also Healthy Hibernation by Lauren Smith. You should go check that out. Get copies. Wonderful children's book that has a non-sledgehammer message. It's not like the characters are not delivering Ayn Rand style soliloquies. It's subtle.
Yes, that's right.
So check those things out.
Thank you so much, and I always really enjoy our conversations. Thank you for everything.
Thanks so much, Dave, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.